Hello, listeners. Hi, my name is Madhavi, and I'm so happy to have you on UppTalk. You have come to the right place if you want to learn about IT and do really cool things with your hands. We are not just another IT company when I say UppTalk. Think of us as your learning partner dedicated to helping you reach your full potential. We have top notch hands on courses to help you build your business, whether you are new to technology or want to move up in your current job. Let's look around this as our first step towards learning.
Now we need data to play around with these shapes. For that, we need to understand the different type of data profiles and everything that is offered by Boomi, like kind of data that you can bring in and as a service Boomi offers it. Boomi fairly offers us these profiles. One is XML, another one is your flat file, another one is your JSON, another one is your ADI. XML is basically your XML language, the markup language. Flat file is essentially your CSV files or text files, anything Swix. Those come under flat file category. And JSON is your very, what do you say in curly braces and simple notation, object-oriented notations kind of thing. And EDI profiles are for electronic data interchange. It is called basically for you can say healthcare systems or some transactions between banking systems, or you can say for warehousing applications. They use these EDI profiles for data interchange between different businesses. Let me give you a simple example of how the XML profiles would look, like a very simple one. It would be like employees, employee ID, first name, last name, something. It's a sample employee data. Inside your employees, which would be your parent element, this would be a child element. It would have a few fields like this. This is all a single batch document containing multiple individual documents if you split it on employee. This is how your very basic XMLs would look like. Then we have flat files. Wait, let's continue on XML first. In your process, let's go here. There are multiple ways to add it. Let's do it a simple way. We click on New Component. We scroll down, or we can just simply type in XML profile. We select that. We can do something like this, create it as manually. You can give it name of employees. Inside it, add child element. You can name it as your, what would you say, employee like this. And then you can add multiple child elements in it. First name, something like this. This was the sample data which we inserted it here. It would have all these fields that you're talking about. And this is how it would look, your example profile. Let's name it as XML for an easy identify tag. Then employee, just save it. Similarly, we can create this flat file. This would be our CSV file. We can name it as F4 for easy identification CSV. We name it as employee. We save it. All I'm doing is just copy pasting the name. Do we have to specify the file that we've helped type in? This square of a kit is a mandatory. It's a standard and good practice for easy identification. Now, when you're working, you could have multiple files here, or your different tabs can be open. For easier identification into navigate, and even in logs, you can easily identify your things. Got It's not like any kind of restrictions. When we employ a standardized practice, make sure. That's about it. First, let's start with flat file. XML will be a little more complicated. Flat files are nothing but essentially your CSV files or text files where you specify data, something like this, it would like employee ID, first name, last name, department, job title, salary, everything. It's a comma separated one. This is how it would be. Your root element would be this record. Then you would have your elements, and inside it you would have a list of all your elements. This row you're seeing like first row. All these fields would be available here like this under options. Suppose this is your source file, a flat file. If you see that in the sample file that the source application team has given you, if it is having this row, you need to specify this. Check, use column headers. If you uncheck this and you are receiving it like this, what will happen? Boomi will think this also has a data which would be incorrect, and it would throw error for this. You need to always specify if it is having these column headers. You check, mark this that it reads the first row accordingly. Then file type measure, it is always delimited. And what kind of delimiter we are using here? If you look at the file, it is comma separated. Had it been like star delimited or something like that, we would have used a study limited file. There are multiple options. And majorly, what businesses use either bar delimited or comma delimited, that comes into major play. You need to specify what type of delimiter it is. You are able to segregate out the data you define. You are able to define it out for Boomi to understand on its own. Boomi would not know anything. You need to define out every single thing. Then you have text qualifiers, then you have text qualifier escapes. What is a text qualifier? Something like this, a double quote or a single quote. Anything between these closing and ending double quote would be considered as a single keyword. And then text qualifier escape is used to, indicate that it is part of the data rather than being a text qualifier. Here it is a sing comma in our case. In this example, if you look here that it reads John Doe as a single unit, now delimiter escape would be something like you would give it as a hyphen. Suppose if instead of comma, rather there is no hyphen, you need to let it know that it's a single keyword and not a separated one, not two separate words. Some of you suppose you don't have a text qualifier, nothing like this, just a delimiter escape. It would look something like this. You do not want your integration to get blocked at this point where it does not understand what does this hyphen do, or it processes that something else. You specify that this is a delimiter escape. Basically, read the John hyphen do as a single keyword. That is the use case of it. Hey Reshi, one question. Here, we can see that in your text qualifier where you have, I think, any written. We have either the double quote or single quote only. Do we have option to have other ones? No, only these two are allowed. And can you please drop down the file delimiter? Let's say if I have another delimiter which is not mentioned here, I can use the other character here. Correct. Yes. You can define it something like this or something like this, any kind of random thing. Quote. There are times when we use hash also, we specify it like this. You can define that over another character. What about byte character? Byte character is something like, let me. It's basically your these Unicodes kind of thing only. Like 0, except for these kind of things. If it's an encoded file that you are receiving, base 64 encoder or something like that, this is about this. Any questions on these for now, or you're good with the basic understanding about this? Uh, I will assume that is good for now. Let's move to element details. What all options are available? This is an employee ID field. When you are integrating this from business, they would ask you to make this a mandatory field. How do you make this feel like whenever the data is coming from your source system? Business would say always check if this field is a mandatory or not. Or you can do that is by simply enabling this checkbox. If this field is a value is not present, it would simply throw an error saying that this value is available. This document is rejected that particular data. You achieve that using this mandatory check. You can set it up for almost like all fields, but you need to be careful around it to which field you are giving that. You cannot set it on your own. It has to be like a source application team. Then, similarly, they would say filter out duplicates, only take the first set of value, ignore the other ones which are coming in with the same ID. Something like that you enforce unique with this check. What it would do is, if suppose there are two rows like this, Salon on one, and again other one, Bob Johnson, he also has same employee ID as John Doe. What this is going to do is just only take John Doe and ignore. The Bob Johnson file is record. Basically, with this enforced unique check, that is the use of this. This is like a very common use case where this is how you avoid duplicates in a flat file by enabling this enforced unique checkmark. Then comes the field and validation. Now suppose let's take this here. You have this file. Let's just remove all this. Let's keep it a little simple. You got this data from your source system with all this 2006 Emma Wilson, all this information. Now field and validation comes into play where there is a restriction on the target system. Suppose for this name, Emma, they're sending in 4 letters like 4, 5, maybe 10 letters or something like that. Emma, something like this. But your target system has a restriction for first name. Only 4, like 4 characters are allowed. In that case, you know Boomi profile. This document will flow through all the way along to here and get rejected. You do not want it. As soon as you receive your data, you want to perform all these checks. You do that here. Max in the loudest for like that. For that field, if it fails on that, you know it would just throw that error that max length of 4 exceeded. Your document gets rejected here itself. Only, in the first 2 steps, it doesn't necessarily goes until the last step. That is a use case of field and validation, and it is very widely used. These kinds of validations are set. Then when you have fields related to timestamps and everything, or like this employed your salary, you need to set the data type correctly. Ensure it is number. That when you're playing around with these fields, in your maps, doing the transformations and everything, it is considered as a number rather than a string or character. All this again, I will be like explaining deep dive into all this later. For now, you just need to ensure if it's something like this, employee ID, salary, these kinds of fields, their data types need to be passed on correctly. And whenever you're receiving your requirement from your business in the Excel document where they share the mapping requirements, they ensure there is a column for data type for all the fields that you specified correctly. Because there can be cases where employee ID is something like this as well. A 3045, something like this, but you thought in general it would be only a number. You just specify it as number and then the incorrect data type, and you cannot put on transformations for it. Always ensure you receive data type as well in your business requirement. Any questions far? I will take that as no. Let's move on to employee file. We have this would be like our parent element in it. This was the sample, employees file. The XML in Boomi would look like something like this for a very simple structure. This would be a parent. This would be your child. And then again, these would be like sub-child elements in it. Then again, namespace and qualifiers. I would explain it a little later. It would be a little too much information for now. Then for each field, this is in flat file, we had that check. Mandatory check here. We achieve that using minimum occurs. Minimum occurs. If it is set to 0 means it is not a mandatory field. If you set it to 1, it will check if this field is coming in at least once or not in the document. And you need to enable this check mark. Here, respect minimum occurs, that once you have enabled this, it will allow for this mandatory check, basically. Now, if you look at it, all of this is, a nested document, like a complete batch of documents. You can set something like this. Max occurs as one or unbounded one word, and sure it is only coming in once. This employee ID 1001, it is not getting repeated. If you set it as unbounded, you are allowed to have multiple values in this. For the same ID like 111, you can have multiple places. Now, if we do something like this, minimum occurs when max occurs, unbounded means employee ID cannot be negative. It cannot be blank, but it can have same values for multiple records in it. Looping options is for if basically there are sections like this, this whole employee record, it can be repeated if you allow that. If you click on occurrence, then multiple instances will be brought in as it is. If they are same, like something like this, Now, with this occurrence check of looping option, you are allowing multiple loops of the same set of data. All majorly, we ensure we keep it too unique that if any duplicate records are coming in, we throw them out. But whenever you're playing in, a finance domain or something like that, offer some transaction related information. Confirm with your business if you can expect like similar set of data, a set of records. Probably the transaction was done twice or something like that. Always confirm if you are expecting another similar set of record, identical one, you do that. Then again, same field and validation and everything, minimum length, max length you achieve using this. Then again, generally encoding is left to UTF-8, but very rare chance it comes into this as KUTF-600. I guess I did 599 one. That is about this. Again, namespaces, qualifiers will bring in a little later into like third week because it makes it a little more complex. First, we can like focus on, building up basic integrations and everything. That is about this. Any questions, XMLs? We can. I mean, that may be the question which you will be covering later. But suppose if in case we have a nested structure for those elements, will you be covering maybe a later? You will be playing around with that using namespace and qualifiers. We'll bring in a little later. It would be too much of information for now. That is about. This is next we look at is JSON profile, which is very widely used. There are two ways to around it. You can either import it or create a root element and then add your elements and a repeating unique. For now, I just imported a sample profile for us to understand again, same employee data. I don't know if we'll be having this nested structure or not. But again, it follows a similar pattern. Required is for marking. It is like a mandatory check kind of thing. Then you have your field and validation. You have your data type for all these fields. Now again it performs value type and all this I'll explain a little later. We'll play around with this next week sometime. For now, we'll just keep with simple explanations. Minimum occurs, max occurs, follows the same principle as how I showed it in XML profile. Minimum occurs, ensures it is occurring at least once. Max occurs as unbounded, ensures you are allowed to repeat the data loop, that record loop. You're not just restricting it to one. Something like this. That is about JSON. Now we bring in the EDI profiles. EDI profiles is used between when you're setting up an integration which communicates directly between two different systems which are, connected to some hardware devices kind of thing. They use EDI profiles majorly. It is widely used for shipping information related, between applicable warehouse devices, or you can say between banking transactions or in healthcare devices. You have some of the machines in your hospital and all. All those kind of things, they commit that communicate using EDI, electronic data interchange. A very commonly used one is X12850. Type X12850 is nothing but a purchase order. Suppose you're ordering something on Amazon or something. When it is communicating with any EDI system, it would be using this particular profile in it X12850. It would have again, a sample EDI file would look something like this. A BX would be, beginning of your purchase order. RAF would be considered reference information such as your purchase order number. You would be identifying it like this. P01 is your individual item, including quantity, item description, price. Like all of this information you would receive from your application team, like how to read through your file, and this 10 signifies what E, a signifies what I signifies what, like this kind of information. That is about this EDI profiles, or not just a basic information. We'll be looking at it a little later in Boomi. Now let's do a cleanup of everything. You have your start ship. Before that, let's move into set properties. Set properties are basically like how in coding languages we have variables which we can use, across our process, something like this. Set properties come into play to set up such values which you can use across your process or in a sub-process or in a line flow, those kind of things. That is the use case of set property. Shape allows you to set properties that you can reuse. There are essentially 4 types of properties. Mind property, you ignore for now. Document property, dynamic document property, dynamic process property, process property. Document properties are something which you set up on your connections, basically. Again, these values would be predefined for this kind of property. Suppose if you're looking at ANSI Connect, some of them are available by default, some of them are not available. We can set up our own values as well. If it's a Salesforce, it has mandated to just these 3 like query limit. For whatever connection you are setting up, you can set up a property for it that you can change its value during your testing or for your, in your each execution. That is its use case. These are set at connector level, basically on your connections. Is this clear, or any doubt on document property? Then moving on to next one, we have dynamic document property. Dynamic document property is for basically once you know you have received your data from your connector, you have 10 documents. Dynamic document property is set up on those each individual document. You can set it up for each field, like at the field level for it, basically allowing you to play with the data in it. You would set up something like this, start date. You go to profile element, you can further filter it out. We choose X, we choose employee. Now I am storing my employee ID in my DDP dynamic document property. Now going further, I can play around this dynamic document property employee ID. I can set up some conditional checks, decision share if employee ID equals to this, send it across this path, only something like that. And this is where this dynamic document property comes in handy. That is, the use of this dynamic process property is set up at your whole process level. Again, same as other properties. This is majorly used for logging purpose or setting up a value once it is not set at document level. Basically, you can use it to, store a timestamp kind of thing. For a simple example, you store your current date. Now you can use this property to perform some kind of comparisons later in your process. Like this is where this dynamic process property comes into play. You should never be setting it up on your profile elements dynamic process property, because if you set up your dynamic process property on this particular profile value, suppose you set it up on your employee ID. Now when your documents are flowing across one by one, it will end up resetting this value to the next one. You would not have a consistent value for it. You only set up your dynamic process properties on kind of information that you want consistently to be, used across your process for comparison standpoint kind of thing. That is its use case. Next comes in process property. Process properties are something which you set up for your runtime. Basically, again, same thing. You can add it here. It can be Boolean date, hidden number string. Use case of this is you set them at a pure environment level. Basically, you created your process. It is in a lower environment kind of thing. It is in a lower environment. Now you are promoting it to a higher environment using your connectors. All this if you set up your connection here directly. If you just promote it again, you'll have to come back to your integration and edit those properties. This is where this process property comes into play. You set them at the environment level. When you're promoting your integration to a higher environment, you can just edit those properties values here. Essentially, like it can be your URL or something like this. Maybe API token, and you can mark this as a hidden string kind of thing. You can assign all of them a default value of your lowest environment or of your production. If you're setting it up, you can assign a default value here. And later you can change it in your environment. Basically, if your token is rotating every 3 months, you can rotate it using this value. That is a use case of process properties, allowing you to modify these properties at runtime. That is its use case. Suppose you have an order processing integration. This is how you would use each of your properties. Suppose you're having this dynamic document property. You can set, your order ID for each document as it passes for it to track it basically for logging purpose or for some decision making. Then again for your orders, you would have a total order value something. You can, use it for kind of thing like to track it as how much was the total add order value consistent across your process execution. And it can later be used in you to print it out in your logs or reports or send it out. An email like this was the total value for it. And the process property, like I was explaining, suppose your API endpoint, you can change it with your higher environment promotion. That is where it comes in handy. Document property. You can set it to your, like an API key or token authorization. Whenever you're calling an HTTP web service, it asks you to send the token in each request. It does not allow you to, keep your session open. There, this document property comes in handy where you push this in each request. That is, it's like use case. Now we will slowly focus on practicing into Boomi. Explain you about this message shape. This is basically like that free text box or like for altering your data. We primarily initially use this for development. When we just have received sample data from the application teams, we still not have set up connections and all, or we do not want to waste in, we start out with the basic way we take the sample data. Whatever it is like this, and we just copy paste it in our message. And we use it like this for our initial basic field part. We would do something like this. We can enter something like this CSV employee data. We would do that. We simply connect it with a start shape. Once that is, there's one question. This CSV employee data will just act as our source as of our purpose. Yes, it will act as our source. Let's set up a map to convert this data into an XML format or something. Let's assume that, and as you know, just a demo connection. Let's put a stop shape there for now to understand how the data flows. We simply connect this. We do something like this. In your maps map shape, you can say it is CSV to XML like this. And something like this. Leave it here like this CSV to XML conversion if you want to write it that big. And here you can put it out as map. Whatever your source is, you always write that. And if it is employee data, you usually write it out like this employee data XML. You understand, you're converting employee data from CSV to XML. It's always like a good practice to divide it based on your source profile and target profile in the naming convention. It becomes an easy identifier. Hey Rishi, could you please repeat when you from the map? I could not follow you. Whenever you're naming things up, performing the naming action, just try to, whatever your source profile is, start with that. Whatever the data type you're performing the action on, if it's employee data or some order information, or if it's an employee, when we were discussing these, all this personal info address, just specify whatever it is. Like that, like CSV, it is personal, something like this. You're converting personal info into XML. Whenever you check your logs or something, you will be easily able to identify this failure, this step basically. Understood. It's just a matter of convenience and easy identification. Now here in your map sourcer, click on Choose. Again, you can segregate it or keep it to single. Best is to select it as flat file or something. Because when you have, multiple profiles and multiple projects running in, it has an easy identification. Otherwise, you would have to scroll up through everything. And like it's a kind of a trick kind of thing. But be careful while using this. On the top, always it will show your recently used file. Otherwise, initially, to start with, always browse through your folder and select your file properly like this. Similarly, choose your target code XL. Go to your folder, name it as XML. Expand. You can simply map your elements like this. Now we have done a one-to-one mapping. We are simply trying to convert CSV into XML. Let's see what happens now. We click on. Now all this is saved. We can name it as a simple CSV to XML conversion. Something like this. Now to test it, click on test icon. Simply select test item and click. We'll see how the data flows in. If it breaks, what happens when we do a simple something like this? Now I do the shape picture. It would not show the data which is available there. It would always show you the data from the previous step. Since it starts up, we did not have anything. This is a blank document. Now we come to map shape. We got the data of the previous ship, which is a message where we had provided the input CSV data. It looks something like this, which is what we are trying to put. This is correct. Now let's look at this and stop shape. Looks like the conversion has happened. Let's see. We got Sarur Jondo, engineering software engineer. Perfect. Let's look at other documents. We got again 2001 Bob Johnson because we had renamed it during our discussion. Let's look at some other. 2005. This is perfect. Now if you look at logs, but it would show you the steps that are happening. Let's take a look at the logs for message map shape. Since this was a one-to-one mapping, you do not have any other log information. Let's just go back. Is this clear basic thing? If you have doubts at any point, just stop and ask. I have one question. Why is it on any shape? Why is it showing the documents from the previous step? Because that's how the data flow works. That on your next step, you're able to see what came to it basically. Because that is where the action is happening. It is not yet completed on this shape basically. Any shape will always show its input, not the author. Correct. If we have to see the output, we have to go to the next step, always. Yes, that is correct. Now let's come here. Let's do a minor play around with this. Instead of first name and last name, let's just say name. And remove this delq element. Now you only have your name. Let's perform a function. Functions are basically your transformations that you can perform on your data. The business requirement came in where you want to. They asked you to combine the first name, last name, because the source system does not send them combined, but your target system only expects it combined in a single field. You go to your functions, add a string function, you perform a string concatenation function. You can either add a delimiter or not add a delimiter. You can ignore that. That is up to your business requirement. If they want to put up hyphen or just a space. And if you want to set up a length restriction on it, you can perform all that in your input. You would give first name that you are able to map to it correctly. The inputs for your function here, in case if first name and last name are not coming in, you can assign a default value always, which would be used. Now what you would do is simply map your first name, your last name to this and your result to this. Now let us see what happens here. You just click on Run Test. Here, let's look at it. We had this basic shift. All was separated out. Let's look at the documents here. If you see, now the name is combined with a space because we not see the output of the function. How is it for farming? Because here we are looking at the map level. Can we dig inside it? Yes, yes, yes. So this is a way to come to that. This is how we will check how that action is happening for the function we define. For the first record in it, The function got executed where the first name was John, second name was, last name was do this action that we performing on, it was string concat. It took the result output as John Doe. And the output element became, this was the output of it. If you check here, this is the result output that we are seeing here. Output element named John Doe, that got mapped. This is going to print many logs for document. Can we reduce the number of logs, or is it always mandatory to have such logs? It will differ. It will differ in your actual logging, it will differ. And in test mode logging, it will differ. We will have those restrictions coming in and like the explanations about it. And this essentially we can control out how much log information we want to print out or like just scale it immediately after execution. This is how you are able to see your function executions. Now, business set the source system. Whatever salary they are printing, generating it has some misalignment with the target application. Say there is some difference of like 1000 or 2000 something. Let's take an amount. They want us to add that amount and send to target for processing. What we can try is use a numeric function, math, add something like that. Value to add, let's add 11,000. We will disconnect it here. We will pass it to the value. Now into this value, salary will be coming here. And 1000 would be added to salary and result. We would map it here. We go back. We don't need to save basically. We just click on test. There should be one question. Let's say if it is a big process. And when we are testing it, it always starts from the beginning. Is there a way? Let's say first and second step are already executed. And I'm making changes to the third one. And I want to test that. Is there a way we can start the testing from the third one only? That minimizes my testing. There is a way to play around with that. Suppose you have your connectors and everything like a lot of business logics. If you just want to test out your particular branch, you take your start shape, take a message shape, input your data. Just before what you want to test plays these work and it would trigger the test from there. The rest of the previous shapes would be stay disconnected temporarily. But that will also not give me the transform data from those steps. Correct? Yes, it would be without that. If you want to perform, but if I need that, there is no other way. It will always have to start from here. Now let's look at this. We performed another function. We are seeing it here. We got our input 70,000 was a salary. We wanted to perform math add. The output came in as after adding 1076, it got mapped. Similarly, it is happening for all the employees. This is how this works. Now always remember there are two limitations on your test mode. One is your data size cannot exceed 10 MB. Second one is it cannot process more than 100 documents. That is the limitation on this in your test mode always. Initially, it might be a little tough to remember, but eventually you will end up remembering it. Once you start seeing failures, you know when you're running your test cases, these kinds of things. Try to ensure you remember this always. Because there will be like a lot of times when you're trying to run a test case where you want to see for like 100 documents, 200 documents, how it is performing. But then both of them will come in combined. You'll have to be careful while playing around. Otherwise, you're not tested. You'll have to end up deploying your integration and then test it out. How do we do the performance testing in lower environment in that case? How do we do performance testing in lower environment? By deploying your integrations. When we do the I get it. This test mode is without any deployments. You're not deploying it to any environment. You are just using this server test atom. Basically, Atom is your server. You're using a CPU to just run your process. You haven't assigned it to any dev, QA stage environment or production environment. You just use your hardware to test it out. That is about this basic conversion. Similarly, we can perform a lot of functions. Now, let's remove all this. Let's do a simple one-to-one mapping again. And now you cannot have something. You can only do one-to-many mapping kind of thing, but not many to one. You can have, like your first name up to 3 fields here. But it cannot be something like your target is mapped to multiple fields. That is not allowed. Only one-to-many or one-to-one mapping is allowed. Is this visible? Yes. You can create a new component. Create a process first. Create this cross set. Click on No Data. You can name it as Start. Click. That's fine. You can name it however you like. That's fine. Just click on Save once that you save your process. Now go to your demo folder towards left navigation. Just go to left side to demo folder. On the 3 dots you see, add a new component. New component. From the drop down, select Flat File Profile. Just you can type in affiliate flat. Click create. You can rename it as employee, CSV employee, something like that. Now you can, under the Elements tab, just add 6 elements. 5 elements you can add below. You see Elements, Data Elements options here. Click on drop down, add multiple elements. This is a insert multiple elements. You can select that, click. Now you have like 6 elements. I am sharing this in the chat. You can open it up in a notepad in another tab and copy paste these names, employee 8, first name, last name in each field element. Manually, you can type them out. This is your second field, I believe. For that's fine. Just select the upper one. It is not visible, but you can select it still. You can select it. Just you can enter there. Like that. You can just rename first name, last name like that. Something like that. Also, I would request others to practice the same thing out like a way that we can just check if anyone is stuck anywhere or, having any issues with creating basic profile. You can also do this in parallel. Next one is title. You can just save this. Now similarly create another profile, XML profile from the demo folder. Go above, click on 3 dots new component. Select, just type in XML. You can click on create. One question, do we really need those profiles? Can we not do without these profiles? No, because using these profiles, this is how you define things for Boomi to interpret and understand. In short, we are saying that we are trying to create a contract and we are abiding by that. Correct? Should we input a profile or? You can click on no thanks. I'll create my profile manually. Add a child element, just one. Click on cancel, add one. Inside this. No, just scroll back to the element on the left side and the drop down. Add multiple child elements. Click on. Now the top element, you can rename it as employees. Above that one, just employee. Above this employee, there is another root element which is not visible. Yes? No, 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 go above employee. Just above it. Just rename this as employees. Now just you can add the names for the remaining ones. Like first all those employee ID and everything. Yes, you can add just name instead of rather first name second. Let's make it simple. Just add a name. Other ones department, job title, salary. You can just save this profile. Now go to your new process. After the start shape, you are not able to copy paste the data. No problem. I manually write the process. Oh, I'll share the document later. You can practice it that way. Now go above in the pane. There is build, deploy, manage. Just go above new process. There is manage drop down. Above it there is manage. Go further up. No, no, no. Scroll up. Take your pointer above. Further up. Now we're on top where there is a blue bar underneath. There is the manage. Go to item management. Now click on add your first environment. Here in the center screen, click on add item. That's fine. Anything is fine. Change it to test cloud. You can name it as test. Hyphen item you can give. This is fine. That's fine. Now in another new create environment, give it as test. And from the classification, select test. Click save. Now you have your test item. In the left side navigation pane, unattached item selected. If you scroll down in it towards the side, attached to environment under atom controls, you have here select test. Create a CPU and assign it environment to deploy our application processes or to run them. Now you can go back to the build. There is Build Deploy Manager on the top below Boomi icon. Now you can just place your message there for now. Later I'll share the data. You can enter that. Just click on for now. You can connect both of these that are mark you see before from start ship. No, no, not like this. Not like this. The other one. Take a map shape. Drag it here and just place it. Click. Connect these two together. From this message shapes arrow to the yes. Can you just plug it out and connect again? Disconnect it. It's not connected. Leave it here like this. No. Keep a distance. Just leave it here. Now you just take that arrow and drag to this shape. It was not. Bring it over the ship. Bring it on top. Now leave it on top of it. Now it is connected. You are seeing that dark gray line. Solid line. That means it's connected. Similarly, start to miss it also. It's not connected. You need to bring it over that ship and drop it. It's connected. Now you can also place a stop shape. Just search in all steps. Basically, you can use search at any time. That's easier. We don't stop. You can just drag and connect it to the map ship. Click. Edit your map shape. You can place it in eye line to always make it look better. You can just click on Save now that you do not lose your progress. Click on this Configure for the map ship. Click on this map plus icon. The plus icon towards the end. You can now create your map. You can choose your profile. Anything you want, flat, X, M, L be created. You can choose any one for conversion, first flat. From drop down, node flat. A plus means you're creating a new one. We already created. From this drop down, select the CSV employee. On your side, select the target one XML. Towards dead end, there is choose map destination. You can select XL. Perfect. Now expand this. There is a plus icon towards left of it. Similarly, this side as well. Now you can map the fields. Not from the drop down, from the name. Just hover over that and drop it on top of it if you are seeing the green light. Yes, perf. You can ignore last name for now. That's fine. We did not create a placeholder for it. Remaining fields. It will take some time getting used to this as well. You can drive from that side as well. Once you see that green highlight, just drop it like leave your mouse button and it will attach it. If you're seeing the green highlight, perfect. Similarly, it's for salary also. Just you can map it or leave it. That's. Now you can save your map. It's completed. You can just now save it and close it. Just save. Now you can just save your new processes as well. Go back to new process. Just save it. This is fine for now. Later I'll share the data and everything today. You can just test run and just play around with the map and see. If you're seeing or something like that, just practice it out for today. If you will, please do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. For more information, contact us sales@therightuptalk.com.